Exploited, the Cyber Truth, a podcast by RunSafe Security.
Welcome back to Exploited, the Cyber Truth. I am Paul Ducklin, joined today by Joe Saunders, CEO and founder of RunSafe Security. Hello and welcome back, Joe.
Hello, Paul, and good to be here.
You're looking forward to this one, aren't you?
The topic is great, and of course, I really like today's guest.
Who is, ladies and gentlemen, Duncan Woodbury, co-founder, president, and CEO of Liberas. Welcome, Duncan.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Now, the reason why we're excited about this episode is a very special subject, which is Hacked at Sea, with a subtitle of On the Frontline of Maritime Cybersecurity. Cue talking like a pirate jokes. More than just maritime security, Duncan, is the fact that you are in charge of the Maritime Hacking Village at DEF CON 33 in Vegas in August 2025. Basically, the world's biggest hacker convention. So, what's a Maritime Hacking Village?
So as you said, DEF CON is the largest hacker conference in the world every year. It's become the most prolific and well-known. It's not a vendor conference. It's definitely not an RSA, and it's not a black hat. DEF CON is the place where the down and dirty hacker community comes to present real security research. There's no sponsored talks. And 10 years ago, this concept of a village emerged. Which at first these were sort of informal hacker collectives focused on bringing real-world systems from each infrastructure sector to come together and hack on, to discover and defend and learn ways to protect critical infrastructure. Before Maritime, Car Hacking Village, ICS Village, and Bio Hacking Village, and Aerospace Village, and Voting Village.
Yes, just for our listeners, some of the embedded device types that have featured in the past, as you say, have gone all the way from electronic voting machines to NASA space probe, spacecraft, satellites, etc. So it sounds like an amazing set of challenges. What do you aim to achieve by setting hackers loose against maritime devices?
So just a bit more to the village model, and I'll get maritime specific. So what we do at villages is we bring people together to perform security research against real-world critical infrastructure systems. And there's all kinds of people at DEF CON, right, of all nations and types. And that makes some people nervous to say, yeah, I'm going to bring my voting machine or autonomous watercraft or aerospace system to DEF CON, and we're going to let anybody hack it. But we know that by doing this in the open, we can create a couple of effects, right? The most critical to improving the long-term security of an industry is developing a competent workforce. And there are no real outfits for professional workforce development. Let's talk maritime now when it comes to maritime cybersecurity. There's no real maritime vulnerability research. There's few folks that are producing low-cost research tools. So these are all the sorts of effects that we're creating, but we're doing it in a very unique environment. So DEF CON is a crazy hack fest. We bring as many systems as we can cram onto the floor. We build a bunch of gamified hacking challenges around them. So complex storylines that sort of bring people through learning how to reverse engineer different aspects of maritime systems, port systems, shipside systems. Our theme for this year is digital blockade in the Pacific. We know that by giving hackers the right environment and opportunity and making it fun and interesting, we can create some really powerful results in just 20 hours of conference time.
So what are some of the top challenges that you'll be putting out?
So it's going to get spicy. The first thing that we got secured was a drug smuggling vessel confiscated by the U.S. Coast Guard. We're really excited to see what kind of kit is on there and give people the opportunity to hack on it. We'll have two, at least, unmanned surface vessels. So USVs, or you think about a drone, but for the water, these are really the future of maritime warfare and ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. 11-foot and 14-foot unmanned boats that carry all kinds of different payloads. We'll also have a couple of other really interesting test beds. We prioritize real systems. We shy away from simulations, and emulations are as far as we'll go. And by emulations, I mean, we take a real world system out of its operational context to a form we can bring to the DEF CON floor. We'll have a real crane control system donated by one of the largest one of the largest ports in the Western Hemisphere, which we're really excited about. Everything up to the crane. And then on the other side of it, we'll have a container challenge where you hack the crane control system through the same configuration as is used by pretty much every port out there today. And if you successfully hack the crane control system, you then use it to open up a container that we're bringing.
Now that, Joe, really sounds like a supply chain attack of a very special sort, doesn't it? The container processing part, it's a pick and place robot that basically works with full-size shipping containers, moving them on and off trains and trucks and in and out and round about.
100% right. And if you consider all the commerce that's done through maritime means and all the global transactions that are happening, the waterways are the avenues for lots of commerce here. And the ports are significant target areas. And so you can imagine if those things are taken out of commission, that there are significant economic consequences of any of these supply chain attacks. And that's why I think the digital blockade concept at the Maritime Hacking Village fits into the storyline quite nicely, because you think about this as blockade. It's not just a technical game, even though DEF CON and the Maritime Hacking Village takes a very serious technical view to all of these topics. The implications and the consequence are so high from an economic perspective. If we had a blockade, if we had a digital blockade in South China Sea, then not only can you get a lot of intelligence, corporate intelligence, you get a lot of nation state intelligence, and you can do a lot of economic disruption.
So Duncan, when it comes to the cyber threat landscape, if you'll pardon me mixing my metaphors, at sea, what do you think are the biggest challenges and what are the biggest risks that we face that perhaps we haven't confronted yet?
The seas are the primary means by which nations and militaries perform power projection today. Corporations too, right? They are the means through which the economy flows that our global society is built on.
Absolutely. Just look at the disruption when one ship got stuck in the Suez Canal recently.
Indeed, exactly. And of course, let's not forget about the internet, which literally runs through the ocean on hundreds of networks of subsea cables. 95% of our GDP here in the US flows in and out of our ports, and 25% of our GDP alone is from that whole industry around loading and unloading ships and maritime transportation and commerce. That is a stupefying number, right? Of our, what is it, a $29 trillion GDP, 25% of it comes from maritime, 30 million jobs in the US are in the maritime sector. That's 10% of the population almost, not the workforce, but the population. So everybody that has a stake in getting something anywhere does it through the seas. If we're talking about military, if we're talking about private sector, if we're talking about crime, commercial maritime infrastructure really is what we like to say is the last dinosaur. I remember when I started in my career in the electric power distribution sector, I thought I would be hard pressed to ever find a set of systems that are more heterogeneous and more disparate and more legacy. Many commercial maritime assets are just starting to see incorporation of digital technologies and automation. A lot of the biggest threats that people are concerned about are somewhat pedestrian when it comes to an elite hacking perspective. Things like spoofing and denial of GPS and spoofing and denial of AIS. AIS, the automated identification system. These are both unencrypted and unauthenticated protocols, which means that anybody with a radio and a computer can impersonate ships when it comes to AIS, and anybody can jam them when it comes to GPS.
Yes, if you think about the cost or the danger of even a fairly simple denial of service attack against something like GPS, being off by a bit when it comes to putting into port, a miss really is as good as a nautical mile, isn't it? So, Joe, RunSafe focuses on hardening the kind of software that goes into embedded devices, small, medium, and large, notably the small ones that may have been around for years and years and years and don't lend themselves well to being reprogrammed and fixed by patches. What do you think makes maritime systems specifically more vulnerable than other industries, like, say, automotive or medical?
If you go back 10, 12 years, automotive cybersecurity really caught everyone's attention with the cyber attack on a Jeep.
Yes.
And that brought the industry to notice that this is a serious issue. If people can take control of a vehicle and crash it. And so that became a hot topic in the industry. And so cybersecurity got really serious after that. And it wasn't that people weren't paying attention to automotive cybersecurity before that. Certainly my colleagues at RunSafe had been spending time in automotive cybersecurity prior to that. And I know Duncan around 2015 or so had been doing a lot in automotive cybersecurity as well. And so maybe the key is follow where Duncan goes and you'll see where the new hot cyber issues are. There just hasn't been as much attention to maritime cybersecurity outside of the technical domains. That's part of the reason why I think the Maritime Hacking Village is an important concept to have. I guess all of that's a long way to get to maybe the answer to the question, which is folks haven't had to focus on cybersecurity in the maritime realm historically. And so as a result of all that, there's a lot of legacy code out there. There's a lot of exposed code out there. Now, there is an additional area, and what I'm excited about the Maritime Hacking Village is some of these vessels that will be on display and will be used for the competitions and the exercises. These are some really exciting autonomous vehicles. And looking at what can be done in a world of autonomy in the maritime world is also a significant game changer for the industry. And we can see all these startups that are building autonomous vessels because of the significant need, both geopolitically and economically in the Indo-Pacific, that there are a bunch of new vessels out there, and they themselves present their own level of security concerns. A lot of them are using COTS software, and maybe even the OEMs or the manufacturers themselves don't quite know everything that is under the hood, even in their own products, at least from a risk exposure area. I think we may learn a lot this year at DEF CON.
So there's a whole different set of challenges, I guess, particularly when it comes to autonomous vessels. You set them out from port, and I think we said this in a recent podcast with Sparky Braun, is it's theoretically possible that some of these autonomous vessels, once someone's cracked the bottle of champagne on the hull or whatever they do these days and set it forth, it may spend its entire working life never coming back to port. How do you go about securing something like that?
We have a lot of new and innovative technology, things like what RunSafe builds, of course, memory protection technologies that privily demonstrate that even when a vulnerability exists and can be exploited, we can prevent it from allowing the entire system to be compromised. So this is like a pretty interesting tool to go into the tool belt. Commercial maritime systems are beasts. Nobody really knows what's underneath the plastic casing, all the different sort of PLCs and ICS systems. And you look at any ship and none of those systems have been patched since that ship has been commissioned 30, 40 years ago, believe it or not. And that has a terribly complex chain of accountability and ownership. We look at an autonomous system. So these have much simpler chains of accountability, very analogous to what made it so straightforward to scale the vision of the car hacking village to transform the automotive industry. It's one of the reasons that we're excited about bringing these systems to the DEF CON floor, because we think these are a pretty unique subset of maritime systems that we can really make an impact in. The vulnerability research that we perform and things that we discover about ways to attack autonomous vessels will scale to larger maritime systems.
The software development process for the upstarts building these programs versus the large manufacturers that have been doing this for years and years and years, they have very different software development practices, and both can benefit from boosting their approach to secure software development in different ways. And I think the larger ones that have been around building these massive platforms do need to look into ways to add in more automation, more security, testing, and the like before they ship their ships. Meanwhile, the upstarts are thinking about really differentiated, advanced new features. Integrating security into their products makes sense, but they are advancing new features and using COTS software and using open source software. Not that either of those things are bad, they're just manufacturing on a much different cycle time. And so they can benefit also from automation, but also from secure software development methods, things like secure by design and related best practices. But let's be clear, what they're focused on is the differentiation and the capabilities that they're trying to exact through these systems. And they're not necessarily focused in on the security itself. And so I do think, as Duncan had mentioned, adding in memory protection so you have runtime defense while those vessels are operational is a key area. I also think all parties can benefit from generating a software bill of materials and really getting a solid foundation. What's in my code, what's in my software, and use that as one aspect of a building block to understand the risk inside these vessels. inside these containers, inside these ships.
Joe, if I can just rewind quickly to something that Duncan mentioned at the very beginning, which certainly resonated with me, the idea that it's worthwhile to expose real world stuff, actual devices, such as the real voting machine, not some software pretend voting machine, to real hackers who are really trying to attack it, ironically for the common good. I think a lot of people get the wrong end of the stick there, don't they? As Duncan mentioned, oh, why would I bring my device to DEF CON where somebody might hack it, and then what happens if they find something and they don't tell me and I've just exposed myself needlessly to the world? How would you set people's mind at rest? Why is it a good thing rather than a bad thing? Just for the naysayers out there.
Well, I think just to be a little cheeky, I would say hiding vulns sinks all ships.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Basically, if you don't probe it, as we said in a recent podcast, the state-sponsored actors or the million-dollar cyber criminals are bound to probe it for you.
And that's just it. I think if you embrace mature software development practices and mature security best practices, engaging in a community like this is only going to make your vessels more secure. One, because you and your team or your products will benefit from all the learnings that come out of these programs. And two, we do know that well-funded and motivated nation states will find these vulnerabilities if you don't. And so it's better to engage and boost your processes and your awareness and your cyber defense than to ignore it. I know it's cheeky to say hiding all vulns sinks all ships, but I think it's true that if you just ignore the problem and you don't engage, then you're not going to be the one who finds out about the vulnerabilities. Potential adversaries are going to find those vulnerabilities. So I think it's important for all organizations to embrace programs like Maritime Hacking Village.
And Joe, I think you said in a recent podcast we did about the EU Cyber Resilience Act, the CRA, that you're going to have to do this whether you want to or you're willing to or not, aren't you? Because vulnerability disclosure, the willingness to say to your customers, to say to the world, we did find a problem, this is the nature of the problem, and this is what we are doing or have done about it. It's become compulsory, and with good reason.
Exactly right. And I think in most compliance programs, it's reasonable to disclose and then have a path to resolve and mitigate vulnerabilities that you have. And so even if you're shipping technology to the US government, even in a SaaS program, you have X amount of days after you find out about a vulnerability to fix it. If you don't fix it and it goes unaddressed, then you're out of compliance. With the CRA, naturally you need to ship or produce a software bill of materials. That's one kind of requirement. But having vulnerabilities that you should have known about be exploited down the road will lead to liability. And so in one sense, that stick, the liability, the penalty should lead people to adopt more mature practices from both a software development perspective and a cybersecurity best practice perspective.
And Duncan, if I can come back to you, maybe you can say something about how you go about letting people hack on, say, a crane control system. How do you let people loose safely on something big, bad, and dangerous as a harbour crane control system? You can't have people just dropping containers all over the place and messing up a real working port. How do you go about doing a real-world test without dropping any real-world containers on any real-world heads?
DEF CON is about having fun first and as serious, as a close second. It's not just like we let people go totally nuts. Let's talk about the autonomous vehicles for a minute, and we'll come back to the crane control system. So everybody that wants to participate signs a hacker code of conduct that has rules about timelines for disclosure and confidentiality and things like that, and it's a legally binding instrument.
So that means if they do find something, the vendor will get first dibs on it, and it won't get disclosed for a reasonable amount of time so everyone can do the right thing.
That's right. And in some cases, it'll never be disclosed. In the cases where it's possible and it makes sense, of course, there's a coordinated disclosure period. We think about that when we're working on components that are maybe not this company's autonomous vehicle, but we're working on this integrated navigation system that's common on many different commercial, maritime environments. So yeah, everybody signs a hacker code of conduct.
So although we're talking about hackers, which for many people is a pejorative word, it implies some kind of criminality, we're not talking about just anybody who wants to have a go. We're not talking about a free-for-all. We are talking about people who are very definitely professionals and probably surprisingly patriotic as well.
Indeed. So, DEF CON is a professional hacking conference and generally is filled with professional white hat hackers. In the past, like at Car Hacking Village, we were able to just rent vehicles from Hertz and Enterprise in the very beginning.
Did you tell them what you were going to do?
Oh, no, no. That was the funny thing, because you can say it's questionably ethical, but that's the decision that was made back then. We don't have quite the same opportunity here in terms of accessibility to real maritime systems.
Yeah.
Of course, it's still open, it's still inclusive, just we have these hacker code of conducts, we have rules around disclosure, confidentiality. When something is found, it's required to be given to the vendor. We have all kinds of mechanisms to enforce these, legally and physically. Some of the gear that we were bringing, people still sign a hacker code of conduct, but like the crane control system. A huge terminal at one of the largest ports in the Western Hemisphere donated a real-world crane control system in the same configuration as it's used by most ports out there used today. We were able to rig something up, rig that up to a container to have a little sort of interactive and immersive aspect without having the 100-foot ship-to-shore crane. And this is the kind of asset we feel comfortable letting anybody hack on.
So is it a full-size container or is it just a model?
This one's going to be an 8 by 8 foot container, which I will remind us, container shipping is very new, and standardization of container sizes to the 20-foot equivalent unit, TEU. A normal 40-foot container is 2 TEU. Just a few decades ago, the 8 by 8 foot container was standard. Not to sound defensive here, but yeah, we'll have a 8 by 8 foot container, real container.
Wow. So this is not just Lego toys with little 5-volt stepper motors. This is the real deal.
Oh, the real deal, indeed. A lot of the original hackers, we talk about like responsible disclosure and full disclosure. The theory behind full disclosure was release as much information as is available at the moment that it's discovered. And that's not what we do as an industry today.
Yeah.
There's good philosophy behind it, but we have converged on responsible disclosure. We find something, we coordinate with the vendor, privately disclose it, give them ample time to fix it. Again, we're not talking about some of the autonomy companies that are coming, but like say we found a vulnerability in a Wärtsilä system, we found a vulnerability in a Siemens or an ABB crane control system. These systems are out there and they're prolific, and we cannot continue to hide. We need to take them into the open and to let people hack on them and discover how to defend them. There is a great shortage of cybersecurity talent when it comes to OT in the maritime sector. And while there are tons of brilliant people, we have to move from the world of perimeter defense and IT network security to a very different paradigm when it comes to the reality of the OT networks and the autonomous systems that are taking hold in the cyber threat and risk landscapes. We have to bring real systems and let people hack on them openly, we believe, in order to lift all ships. So there are people of all kinds at DEF CON. By doing this work in the open and by rapidly and strategically acting on the results that we find, we believe we can much more quickly transition these into the hands of the companies that need them to help bolster those defenses, because penetration testing and security testing is really expensive. We're a nonprofit, we're sponsor driven. We ask folks to sponsor to bring an asset. We like to use an example from the Biohacking Village last year. The vendor chose to disclose they brought a $3.5 million surgical robot that after 20 hours of conference time over 2.5 days, they walked away with 49 high and critical severity vulnerabilities. And you think about a commercial penetration test, so you'll pay $250,000 for somebody to do a component level test, up to $1 million plus for a system level test, and you'll walk away with probably 2 or 3 high and critical vulnerabilities, a bunch of medium and low severities. The cost to get the equivalent value is massive. Our ability to create a fun and engaging environment at DEF CON and generate that level of result in such a short time by no means replaces a professional penetration test. That is a necessary part of a security program, but it provides an opportunity to, in a very compressed timeline, shed light on the things that need to be focused on.
So to anybody who isn't themselves a hacker, if they're going to be in Vegas, can they come and watch people trying out their hacks against the container crane and against the narco-sub and the autonomous vessels, etc.?
Of course, DEF CON is for everybody, and the Maritime Hacking Village is for everybody. And there are plenty of people that we need to be present that aren't hackers, right? Because if we only had hackers and nobody that understood maritime systems, the model wouldn't work.
Quite right.
We have people that have had operational command of huge fleets. We have OT, maritime security engineers, network engineers, mariners, super elite hackers. But there's something for everybody there. The sort of diverse perspectives that people bring are all necessary to establish the context for the hacking. And even for the people that have nothing to do with that, it's meant to be inclusive. There's lots at the village that isn't just for hackers. So while hackers will have plenty to dive into and engage in, we'll have talks, technical talks, policy talks, workshops. There's noob level challenges, right? Again, for newbies who might know how to use a terminal, but might have never written a buffer overflow exploit or whatever. That's okay. There's just going to be tons of people standing there that you can engage with and talk to and learn from. So yeah, we want everybody to come and learn with us. It's not exclusive to hackers.
Excellent. And you don't even need to know how to talk like a pirate.
You can come and learn, yes.
Joe, maybe to finish up, you could say something to product manufacturers in the maritime sector about what they could start doing right now if they haven't considered cybersecurity in the way that we've been talking about it today. If they've had a more traditional approach, maybe a more purely compliance-based approach, maybe an old-style software development lifecycle approach, what changes could they make that would begin to increase their resilience generally against the kind of people who they might otherwise encounter at the hacking village, or worse, through state-sponsored actors who were not on their side?
Well, I do think you could get a baseline and do some penetration testing. And of course, Duncan talked about the benefits of doing that at the Maritime Hacking Village. But also there are secure development frameworks, there's secure by design. There are best practices out there to help boost your software development process to incorporate security into it. And doing things like generating a software bill of materials is one area to really get a feel, scanning your software for vulnerabilities, and refining your timelines and your feedback loops to mitigate those vulnerabilities and really understand what the risk is coming from third parties. Naturally, I would like to promote the notion of runtime defense and incorporating memory protection where appropriate as well, but that's not the only story. So I do think a form of penetration testing, getting a baseline, doing proper scanning and vulnerability management, and making sure you have that bolstered, and then find ways to improve, automate, and replicate. You really do need to look at what your automated tools are and your build systems are. When you are using more manual efforts to test things and more manual efforts to look for things that need to be fixed, then your development process just slows down immensely. And so I think upgrading to more automated tools, incorporating principles of CI/CD.
And CI/CD, that's continuous integration, continuous development. So don't do months and months and months of programming and then see if you pass the tests and, oh, you don't, go back to the beginning, start over. You make sure that at any point with any change, you're in a good, strong position now rather than trying to retrofit the fixes later.
But I think Duncan makes a compelling case for participating in the Maritime Hacking Village, gaining more awareness. Also, if you were to contribute your technology and get the benefits of all that research done on your behalf, you can gain a lot. If nothing else, participating, getting awareness, and then planting the roots of the changes you want to make over the next year, and then contribute your technology next year to the Maritime Hacking Village.
Indeed, confronting your own weaknesses is not a weakness, as we've said many times before. It is, in fact, a strength. Otherwise, someone else will confront it for you. So, Duncan, when and where can people come and see the Maritime Hacking Village?
Villages have become more than DEF CON villages, but we are, global year-round nonprofits that have a big presence at DEF CON. DEF CON will be our biggest event of the year, so it's in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Convention Center. The conference is August 7th through 10th this year. The village will be open the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th. So come to DEF CON. Your DEF CON badge gets you admission to all the different villages. If you can't make it to DEF CON, we have an events page on the website. We'll likely be doing Code Blue Tokyo in November. We'll be doing a NATO summit in Crete in September, possibly BrewCon in September. We'll be doing DistriCon Year 1 in January, and much more to come. DEF CON will be the biggest event, but not your only chance to catch us.
Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your passion and your sense of fun, but also your serious commitment to making the maritime world a cyber safer place. That is a wrap for this episode of Exploited: The Cyber Truth. Thanks to everybody who tuned in and listened. If you enjoyed this podcast, please don't forget to subscribe. Please like us, share us, link to us on social media, and be sure to tell your whole team about us. And remember, stay ahead of the threat See you next time.